The dog was supposed to die in that ditch. Dr. Ethan Carter's hands shook as he lifted the bloody German Shepherd into his car. The animal's ribs jutted out like knife blades beneath his matted fur, and his breath came in ragged, whistling gasps. He wouldn't last the night. But then the dog opened his eyes, golden, fierce, and knowing, and locked onto Ethan's with a look that wasn't pleading. It was a warning. And when the first gunshot rang out, shattering the clinic's front window a week later, Ethan realized this dog hadn't been abandoned. But before we begin, make sure to subscribe to Furry Tales, like this video, and comment below where you're watching from for more inspiring stories made just for you. The wind howled like a wounded beast, rattling the bare tree branches as Dr. Ethan Carter tightened his grip on the steering wheel. The storm had rolled in unexpectedly, turning his usual 30-minute drive from the animal clinic into a nerve-wracking crawl. Rain lashed against the windshield, the wipers struggling to keep up. Just a few more miles. Ethan exhaled, his breath fogging up the cold glass. He had spent the last 12 hours performing emergency surgery on a pregnant Labrador, and exhaustion weighed heavily on his shoulders. All he wanted was to collapse into bed and forget the world for a few hours. Then, a sound, faint but unmistakable, a whimper. Ethan slowed the car, rolling down his window. The icy air stung his face, but he ignored it, listening. There it was again, a weak, pained cry. He pulled over, grabbed his flashlight, and stepped out into the storm. The beam of light cut through the darkness, sweeping over the muddy roadside until a pair of terrified golden eyes stared back at him. A German Shepherd. The dog was lying in a ditch, his fur matted with mud and blood, one paw twisted at an unnatural angle. His ribs jutted out sharply beneath his coat, and his breath came in shallow, panicked bursts. Ethan's heart clenched. Abandoned? Hit by a car? "Hey, buddy!" He crouched slowly, keeping his voice soft. The dog flinched, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Ethan didn't back away. He had seen this before, fear disguised as aggression. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a protein bar, left over from his rushed lunch. Breaking off a piece, he extended his hand. The dog sniffed, hesitated, then lunged weakly for the food, starving. Ethan didn't waste another second. Shrugging off his coat, he wrapped it around the shivering animal. The dog yelped in pain when Ethan lifted him, but exhaustion quickly overtook resistance. "Hang on, boy. You're safe now." The drive to his clinic was a blur. Ethan kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the dog's heaving side, whispering reassurances. Inside the clinic, fluorescent lights flickered to life. Ethan laid the shepherd on the examination table, his trained eyes assessing the damage. A fractured paw, severe dehydration, old scars along his back. This wasn't just an accident. Someone hurt him. As Ethan worked, cleaning wounds, setting the fracture, administering fluids, the dog's breathing steadied. His golden eyes, once filled with fear, now watched Ethan with cautious curiosity. By dawn, the storm had passed. The dog slept, bandaged and warm, his chest rising and falling in steady rhythm. Ethan leaned against the wall, rubbing his tired eyes. He didn't know this dog's story, but one thing was certain. He wasn't letting him go back to whoever did this. Then the clinic door chimed. A man, Mr. Graff, in a leather jacket stood in the doorway, his smile not reaching his cold eyes. "Hey, Doc, I think you've got my dog." Ethan instinctively stepped between Graff and the sleeping German Shepherd. "Your dog?" Graff nodded, eyes flicking toward the exam table. "Yeah, name's Rex. Ran off a few days ago." Ethan's grip tightened on the clipboard in his hands. The dog, Kaiser, as he had silently named him, stirred but didn't wake. His bandaged paw twitched. "Funny," Ethan said carefully. "He didn't have a collar or microchip when I found him." Graff shrugged. "Must have lost it." He took a step forward and Kaiser's ears twitched. A low, warning growl rumbled from the dog's throat, barely audible, but there. Ethan's pulse quickened. He knows him, and he doesn't like him. "Look," Graff said, his tone shifting to something smoother. "I've been worried sick. Just let me take him home." Ethan crossed his arms. "I'll need proof of ownership." Graf's smile faltered. What? Vet records, registration, photos of you with him. Ethan kept his voice steady, but his mind raced. Something's wrong here. Graf's jaw tightened. I don't carry that stuff around, but he's mine. Kaiser's growl deepened. His eyes were open now, fixed on Graf with a look that was neither fear nor submission. It was recognition. Ethan made a decision. I'm sorry, but I can't release him without proof. He gestured to Kaiser's injuries. He's malnourished, has a fractured paw, and old scarring. If he's yours, we should discuss how that happened. Graf's face darkened. You calling me a liar? Ethan didn't flinch. I'm saying I'm a vet, and this dog's been through hell. For a long moment, Graf just stared at him. Then he scoffed, shaking his head. Fine, keep him, but this isn't over. The door slammed behind him, the bell jingling violently. Kaiser let out a shaky exhale, his body relaxing slightly. Ethan moved to his side, running a hand over the dog's head. It's okay, he's gone. But the tension didn't leave Kaiser's frame. His ears stayed pinned back, his muscles coiled. Ethan sighed. Yeah, I don't trust him either. Ethan sat on the floor of the clinic's recovery room, a blanket draped over his shoulders. Kaiser lay beside him, finally asleep, his head resting on Ethan's thigh. He had called animal control to report Graf, but without evidence, there wasn't much they could do. For now, Kaiser was safe here. But for how long? Ethan looked down at the dog, his steady breaths, the way his paws twitched as he dreamed. What happened to you? Kaiser whimpered softly and Ethan gently stroked his fur. You're not going back there, he murmured. I promise. Outside, the wind howled again, but for the first time in a long time, Kaiser didn't flinch. The morning after Graf's unsettling visit, Ethan arrived at the clinic early, a cardboard tray of coffees in hand. He found Kaiser already awake, standing stiffly at the front of his kennel, ears pricked forward. The dog's golden eyes locked onto Ethan with an intensity that still surprised him. This wasn't just gratitude, it was recognition. You remember me from last night, huh? Ethan murmured, sliding open the kennel door. Kaiser limped forward, his bandaged paw barely touching the ground, and sniffed at Ethan's outstretched hand before giving it a tentative lick. Progress. Ethan was scratching behind Kaiser's ears when the clinic door chimed. He turned, expecting a morning appointment, but instead found Sophie Larson leaning against the doorframe, her arms crossed. You look like you slept in your clothes, she said, raising an eyebrow. Ethan glanced down at his wrinkled scrubs. Because I did. He nodded toward Kaiser. Had a late-night visitor. Sophie, a dog trainer who rented the space next door for her obedience classes, stepped inside, her boots clicking against the tile. Kaiser stiffened, his tail lowering slightly but didn't growl. Small miracles. Sophie crouched a few feet away, letting Kaiser sniff her before speaking. So this is the mystery dog Graf came back for? Ethan blinked. How did you... Small town, Ethan. Mrs. Perkins saw him storm out of here last night and called me. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a treat, offering it to Kaiser. After a tense second, he took it. She also said he looked like he wanted to punch you. Ethan exhaled sharply. He threatened to take Kaiser. No proof of ownership, just demands. Sophie's expression darkened. She ran a hand over Kaiser's back, pausing when he flinched at a particular spot near his ribs. These scars aren't from an accident, she muttered. They're too precise. A cold weight settled in Ethan's stomach. He'd suspected as much, but hearing it aloud made it real. I called animal control, but without evidence. We get evidence. Sophie stood, determination hardening her features. I have a friend at the precinct. Let me see if Graf's name pops up anywhere. The police report in Ethan's hands made his blood run cold. Suspect linked to multiple animal cruelty cases. Suspected involvement in illegal dogfighting ring. Investigation ongoing. Kaiser, lying at his feet, nudged his leg with a whine. Ethan crouched, pressing his forehead against the dog's. We're not letting him near you again. But Graf wasn't going away quietly. That evening, as Ethan locked up the clinic, a shadow moved near the dumpsters. Kaiser's growl was instant, his body rigid. A figure stepped into the dim streetlight. Graf, his smirk visible even from a distance. Changed your mind yet, Doc? Ethan's grip tightened on Kaiser's leash. Get off my property, Graf chuckled, taking a step closer. Kaiser's snarl escalated, his teeth bared. For the first time, Graf hesitated. Ethan didn't. Next time you show up, he said quietly, I won't be calling animal control. I'll be calling the police with your arrest record in hand. Graf's smile vanished. He backed away, melting into the darkness. Kaiser didn't relax until long after the sound of footsteps faded. Ethan knelt, running his hands over the dog's trembling shoulders. It's okay, he whispered. You're safe. But as he looked toward where Graf had disappeared, one thought echoed. This is far from over. The following week passed in uneasy quiet. Ethan kept Kaiser close, refusing to let him out of his sight, even setting up a makeshift bed for the German Shepherd in his office at the clinic. The dog had become his shadow, padding silently behind him from room to room, his ears constantly twitching at every sound. Sophie had managed to get a restraining order against Graf, but Ethan knew paper wouldn't stop a man like that. The police were still building their case, and until then, all they could do was wait and watch. Ethan was in the back room sterilizing instruments when he heard it, the sharp crack of shattering glass. Kaiser erupted into furious barks, his claws scrabbling against the tile as he bolted toward the front of the clinic. Ethan dropped the forceps he was holding and ran after him, heart hammering. The front window was broken. A rock the size of a fist lay amidst the glittering shards, a note tied to it with twine. Hands shaking, Ethan unfolded it. You should have handed him over. Kaiser sniffed at the rock, then let out a low, continuous growl, his hackles raised. He turned toward the door, his body coiled tight, ready to attack. Ethan grabbed his phone and dialed Sophie. He's escalating, he said the moment she picked up. She arrived within minutes, her face grim as she surveyed the damage. We need to get you both somewhere safe. Ethan shook his head. I'm not running. Kaiser's finally starting to trust people again. If I drag him to some strange place now, it'll undo everything. Sophie exhaled sharply. Then we set up cameras, and you don't go anywhere alone. Kaiser pressed against Ethan's leg, a silent agreement. 3 nights later, Ethan regretted his stubbornness. He'd stayed late at the clinic to finish paperwork, Kaiser dozing at his feet. The parking lot outside was empty, the streetlights casting long, wavering shadows. Ethan turned off the lights and locked up, Kaiser's leash securely in hand. They'd just reached his car when a voice cut through the darkness. Thought you'd never come out. Graf stepped into the dim light, flanked by 2 men Ethan didn't recognize. All 3 looked rough, knuckles bruised, eyes hard. Kaiser's growl was instantaneous, his body rigid. Ethan tightened his grip on the leash. The restraining order means nothing, Graf interrupted. He took a step forward. That dog's worth a lot of money, and you're in my way. One of the men pulled out a bat, the other something worse, a gun. Ethan's blood turned to ice. Kaiser lunged before he could react. The leash snapped taut, then slipped from Ethan's fingers as the German Shepherd launched himself at Graf. Teeth bared. Chaos erupted. Graf shouted, stumbling back as Kaiser's jaws clamped onto his arm. The man with the bat swung. Kaiser dodged, but the second man raised the gun. Ethan didn't think. He moved. The gunshot was deafening. Kaiser yelped, and then sirens. Sophie's voice cut through the noise. Ethan, down! Ethan hit the pavement just as police flooded the parking lot, their flashlights blinding. Graf and his men scattered, but not fast enough. Ethan barely registered the shouts, the handcuffs, the officers securing the scene. All he saw was Kaiser, lying motionless on the asphalt, blood spreading beneath him. The world narrowed to a single point. Kaiser's body, limp on the cold asphalt, the dark pool beneath him growing wider with every second. Ethan didn't remember moving. One moment he was frozen in horror. The next he was on his knees beside Kaiser, pressing his hands against the bullet wound in the dog's shoulder. Blood seeped through his fingers, warm and terrifying. Stay with me, boy. Stay with me. Kaiser's breaths came in shallow, ragged gasps. His golden eyes, usually so alert, were glazed with pain, but they locked onto Ethan's face as if anchoring himself there. Sophie was suddenly beside them, her voice sharp with urgency as she shouted for an ambulance. Someone, an officer, tried to pull Ethan away, but he snarled, "No!" and held on tighter. Kaiser whimpered, his tail giving a weak thump against the ground. He's still fighting. The animal hospital was a blur of sterile white and frantic motion. Ethan paced the waiting room, his hands stained with dried blood, his mind replaying the gunshot over and over. He should have seen Graf coming, should have protected Kaiser better. Sophie sat silently beside him, her knee bouncing with nervous energy. She reached over and squeezed his hand. "He's strong," she murmured. "He'll make it." Ethan couldn't speak. The vet finally emerged hours later, her scrubs splattered with blood. Ethan's heart stopped, but then she smiled. "He's stable." Ethan nearly collapsed with relief. "The bullet missed major arteries, but he lost a lot of blood," the vet continued. "He'll need rest, a lot of it." Ethan didn't care. Kaiser was alive. Graf and his men were arrested, their ties to illegal dogfighting finally enough to put them away for years. The police found evidence linking them to multiple cases of animal cruelty, enough to ensure they'd never hurt another dog again. But Ethan barely paid attention to the news. His world had shrunk to a single hospital kennel, where Kaiser lay wrapped in bandages, his breathing steady but slow. Ethan sat beside him, running his fingers gently over Kaiser's head. "You scared the hell out of me," he whispered. Kaiser's tail thumped weakly against the blanket. 3 months later, Kaiser trotted alongside Ethan through the park, his gait only slightly stiff from his healed injury. The German Shepherd's coat gleamed in the sunlight, his muscles strong again, his eyes bright. Sophie walked on Kaiser's other side, her hand occasionally brushing Ethan's. "You know," she said, grinning, "most people get a goldfish when they want companionship." Ethan laughed, watching Kaiser sniff at a butterfly before returning to his side, ever vigilant. "Yeah, well, most people don't get shot at by criminals either." Kaiser nudged his hand, demanding pets, and Ethan obliged, scratching behind his ears. The dog leaned into his touch, his weight warm and solid against Ethan's leg. Alive, safe, his. Ethan crouched, pressing his forehead against Kaiser's. "You're stuck with me now, buddy." Kaiser licked his cheek as if to say, "I know." And for the first time in a long time, Ethan believed everything would be okay.